What is happening, my friends? Welcome to the Arrington Gavin Show, your go-to spot for sharp insights, bold opinions, and unfiltered takes on the biggest stories of the day. Whether it's politics, sports, pop culture, or the latest buzz, we're diving deep and keeping it real. So do me a favor, kick back, stay informed, and get ready to join the conversation. My friends, welcome to the Arrington Gavin Show. I am your host with the most, Arrington Gavin, coming to you this evening with another great episode. I'm very excited because on today's program, I have a special guest and very honored to have on Mr. Chase Oliver. He is the Libertarian nominee for President of the United States. He is considered a very influential third-party candidate. I had the opportunity to actually speak with him for a short bit when I happen to be a co-host, a guest on my good friend Mr. Conrad Shezventer, who's no stranger to this program. Conrad is the host of the political YouTube show called Shez Who, and on his program he had the theme was why vote third party, and he had a gentleman who was a member of the Virginia Green Party, and was also speaking on behalf of Jill Stein. And then we also had a presidential candidate, Mr. Chase Oliver. Very interesting individual. I've been following him and a fan for quite some time. I had the opportunity to watch him on. It was a debate called the Free and Equal. I think it was Free and Equal debate. It was a debate that had mostly third party and independent candidates on there. And once hearing him and hearing his platform, I'm like, who is this guy? It's just being a kid from Virginia. I'm like, wait a minute. And I was just very engaged. And I was like, you know what? We could definitely use more people like Chase. And I just was very interested and started to follow his platform. And after speaking with him, man, just very humble guy, and excited to have him on the program again. Him taking the time out of his schedule, I know he's busy. It's crunch time, y'all. In some states we still have early voting happening, and then November 5th will be the grand finale. So make sure you are registered. If you're not, make sure you get registered to vote, because so much is at stake in this upcoming race. Again, my friends, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to tune into the Arrington Gavin Show. Look, we drop new episodes weeknights at 11 p.m. on our radio affiliate WDJY 99.1 FM Straight Talk out of Dallas, Georgia, as well as WDJY FM online, WDJY FM.com. And you can also tune into the program wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's iHeart, Spotify, Apple, you name it. You can tune into the Arrington Gavin Show. You can also subscribe to our channels. Our YouTube channel is R Smooth Club Media, the letter R and then Smooth Club Media. You can just subscribe now, share with a friend, leave a comment, like all that great stuff. You can also subscribe to our Rumble channel for all you Rumble subscribers out there at the Arrington Gavin Show. What else am I missing? Oh, social medias. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Instagram at the Arrington Gavin Show. So multiple ways you can stay engaged and stay informed with the show. Let's see, what else am I forgetting? Oh, we would like to thank some of our proud supporters of the Arrington Gavin Show, like my friends over at Ingenious Gin. Ingenious Gin is a veteran-owned, black-owned gin brand. I'm telling you, it's with the unique spin of the original gin. This amazing spirit is something that you should always have at your bar, your party. I myself, and I'm a bourbon and whiskey guy. I've never been a gin explorer at all, but I tell you, there's only one gin that I consist in, and that is Ingenious Gin. Again, it's black-owned, veteran-owned. Do me a favor, check out some of your local Spirit or ABC stores. Grab yourself a bottle, and if not, you can visit them on their website at ingeniousgin.com. Again, that's www.ingeniousgin.com. For those who happen to be watching us currently, I've provided a discount code. You'll receive 20% off your purchase by going online to ingeniousgin.com. And do me a favor, my friends, make sure to drink responsibly. We don't want you out here wilding. Drink responsibly, please. And so yeah, I think that's about it. That's about all. Oh, what the fun facts. Usually I do it after a commercial break, but because I have a special guest on, I want to take most of the time to enjoy this opportunity and have a great conversation with Mr. Oliver. So before I move forward, my friends, gotta change up the order today. So for today's fun fact, this is for all you cookie lovers, especially your Oreo lovers out there. I'm not crazy about Oreos. I'm more of a chocolate chip kind of guy. But this fun fact is It says the way you eat Oreos says something about your personality. I could understand that. It says here that Kraft Food once surveyed 100 Oreo eaters and sussed it out. Biters are easygoing and self-confident, while dunkers display more energetic and adventurous qualities, while the twisters, okay, on the other hand, are sensitive and trendy. I'll be honest, my friends, I can't stand Oreos. I'm sorry. I don't mind them. I'm more of like a the chocolate covered Oreo thins. Like those are not bad. But I'm a chocolate chip guy. I'm basic. How can you ruin a perfectly chocolate chip cookie? It's just, come on now. All this, twisting and all that stuff. But people have looked at me funny because I'm not an icing guy. I don't eat the icing like on cupcakes. I take the icing off and I just eat the cupcake. Or even if I have cake, I just take the icing off. And people look at me weird. I'm like, hey, mind your business. I'm all about the bread here, sir. Anyways, my friends. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You are listening to the Arrington Gavin Show. Do not change that dial.
Become a man of distinction with Rugged Evolution Beard Care. Order our scented beard oils and beard balms to help you maintain and grow the perfect beard. Order today. Try our men's care products like the full body exfoliating cleansing bars, body wash, smooth stash, and more. Log on to our website or download our app to place your orders. Rugged Evolution Beard Care. We're your luxury but affordable men's care line. And remember,
rugged is the new smooth.
All right, my friends, welcome back to the Arrington Gavin Show. I am your guy, Arrington Gavin, and I'm so thrilled because we have a special guest today. As I mentioned earlier in the program, we're going to be having, and we're having some actually technical difficulties. We're going to get him back in a second. We have Mr. Chase Oliver that is online with us. Hold on real quick. Give me 1 second. Just having some slight difficulties. We're going to take a quick commercial break, my friends. Don't go anywhere. Again, you are tuning into the Arrington Gavin Show. What is going on, my friends? Welcome back to the Arrington Gavin Show. I am your host, Arrington Gavin, and we are very excited to have on Mr. Chase Oliver. He is the Libertarian nominee for President of the United States, and he took the time out of his busy schedule to to come on the program to have a great conversation. I am excited again to welcome Mr. Chase Oliver on. How you doing, sir?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, so excited to have you on, and I'm, looking forward. Look, I don't normally get it kind of snazzied up here for guests. This is the first. You're the first, sir. I just want to let you know, the first that got me wearing a tie here on the show. So we are just we're thrilled to have you, and again, thank you for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's all good. Is that Ron Simmons behind you?
That is. So I had the opportunity. So during my startup in radio, I had the opportunity. The first celebrity I got to interview was Mr. Ron Simmons. And so I'm a huge wrestling fan too. So it was definitely, it was my upbringing, the Attitude Era, all that stuff. I had the opportunity to meet him. He came down to a local semi-professional wrestling promotion and signing autographs. And he's a very, very humble guy, and still very stocky, by the way. For
I can imagine.
Very stocky.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I'm a huge wrestling fan. That's why I was thinking that was Ron Simmons behind you. Just wanted to make sure, he's one of the greats from back in the day. So I just had to shout him out there behind your shoulder. But yeah, I'm excited to be here speaking with you, speaking to your audience, particularly about, how we have more than two options on our ballot.
That is right. And look, I have to ask, and it's okay if I can call you Chase, Mr. Oliver. What's more comfortable?
Absolutely.
Chase, awesome, man, awesome. So first and foremost, if you don't mind, share a little bit with the audience about you, because for a lot of people who are probably unaware, hey, there are more than the two options on the ballot. Can you give the audience just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm 39 years old. I live in the city of Atlanta, and I'm a longtime activist who also has a career both in working in restaurants for 13 years and then moving into the world of maritime logistics, moving goods from one part of the world to the other. And I'm the Libertarian candidate for President of the United States. We, the Libertarian Party, are the third largest political party in America, and we are focused on a message that is rooted in the idea of non-aggression and individual liberty, limiting the power of government to invade our lives and our civil liberties, and really pushing for the ideas of free markets. And so we are a very distinct political philosophy that I think is very attractive to many people who really want to get back to the roots of what can make ourselves prosperous and allow us to live in peace with one another. We're a very live and let live political party. And that's kind of my political philosophy. I've been a longtime peace activist, an immigrants' rights activist, a criminal justice reform activist. And personally in my life, I am LGBTQ and a member of the Episcopalian. And so I'm somebody who is kind of rooted in the idea of let's solve problems without violence. Let's solve problems by uniting together using passive nonviolent resistance to really bring about the change we want to see both in our government as well as in our culture and in our lives.
Awesome. For one word that you mentioned that just stuck to me is peace. I think that's something that we've yet seen for quite some time, in our nation is peace. We see a lot of divisiveness, violence that are occurring. Definitely the back and forth bitterness between the two-party system, really. And I think that's why we're starting to witness the rise of really just independence, independent candidates, third-party candidates as well. I'm an independent. I always say I was raised in a home where, hey, look, we voted on both sides of the aisle without any issue. We're like, okay, we're just gonna vote what's our on person over politics. And I would say the two-party system right now, I think, is starting to continuing to slowly but surely dwindle down. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but again, just seeing the outcome, we still have, not a lot, but we still have some undecided voters out there. And it's definitely a new shift, I would say, in the political space.
Well, I think you're definitely right in the fact that more and more voters are identifying independent of the two-party system. And I think you've identified one of the biggest problems of the two-party system, which is the divisiveness, the partisanship, the polarization it creates. When you have this false binary of only having two choices, quote unquote, it leads to a very black and white thinking of the world. And you never see that nuance, those shades of gray, which is where most American voters, most people really in life don't fall on one strict end of a spectrum or another, whether it's socioeconomics, politics, faith, whatever. There's a large spectrum of the way people live. And in order to embrace that diversity of thought and opinion and the ways of life, we need to be having more than two choices on our ballot. We need to have more than two viable parties. And that's what I think more and more American voters are waking up to, is the fact that the major problems we see in our politics are a symptom of the disease of a two-party system. And so there are things we can do both in this elections moving forward to really challenge those ideas. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be a candidate for president, to give people who feel that frustration a place where they can find a principled candidate who's honest, transparent. You can, it's pretty easy to get through platform. It's not a very complicated thing. And it's something that is rooted in like really deep philosophy of freedom that a lot of people can find to be really attractive. But ultimately, I wish we had 4, 5, 6 parties really representing the whole spectrum of things. But in order to do that, we have to change the way our elections work. We have to have things like ranked choice voting, ending things like gerrymandering. There's a lot of steps for that. And in fact, it's one of my favorite parts of my platform is the Voter Bill of Rights, which is a great libertarian had come up with. And once I became our presidential nominee, I decided to really roll with that, which is really changing the way we vote so we can truly expand democracy, which is something a lot of voters care about, certainly in these last 8 years. And I think this is the policy prescription for it, or things like that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up ranked choice voting, which that was actually going to be a question I was going to ask a little later on within the conversation. Now, you already shared a little bit about yourself to the audience. I have to say it like this, bro. What were you thinking of, entering the political field? Why politics? Like, yuck. I always have to ask, people who, but I look at it as inspiring because I can come across a lot of people that are complainers, right? We all can. It's easy to complain about potholes in your community or this and that, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what are we gonna do about it? Hey, I'm just gonna, it's easy to complain, but you're actually practicing what you preach. You're like saying, okay, look, I see an issue. There's obviously been a lot of leaders that hasn't been matching up to that issue. Well, let me take the leap of faith and, let me run. So I want to ask, was politics was that ever on your, your future, long-term goal list to pursue?
Well, I've always been kind of a political junkie. Even when I was in like high school, I was really always paying attention, watching CNN and like kind of watching the news, that kind of stuff as like a student. And I've always been somebody who's been keenly aware of like what's going on and how laws are created and like what legislation, how our government works. And so I utilized that as an activist when I first got out of school, but always staying kind of aware of these things. But then once I had the opportunity as, a libertarian, we had an opportunity in 2020 to run a candidate for U.S. House, which is something very rare for us to be able to do in Georgia because we have really high ballot access thresholds to run candidates for U.S. House unless it's a special election. And John Lewis had passed away in Atlanta, and so we had a special election. So I got to run in kind of a 9-week sprint of a campaign in 2020. And that kind of gave me the bug because I've always been somebody who's communicated well with people. Most of my career, my job has been in the service industry where I'm actually helping to deliver the bottom line for that customer, making sure they're satisfied, taken care of, their needs are met, whether it's in the food and beverage industry and restaurants, or whether it's in maritime trade, helping customers get their goods to their door so the factory doors can stay open. And so that's the mindset you have to have in politics. It's like, what can I do to serve? What can I do to improve? What can I do to hear what you're going through and provide real solutions? And so to me, it kind of was a natural transition. And I think it's kind of it's a skill set that I think I'm really adept to, is having that retail politics conversation with people and really being able to connect with the voters. And that's something I wish more and more elected officials were able to do effectively, and not just be bought and paid for by lobbyists or like big corporate interests, but actually hearing from the average American person. And maybe that's because I am the average American person. I'm somebody who's had to work that 40-hour week. I feel the pinch of inflation. I know what it means to live paycheck to paycheck because I've done that like in recent memory. It's not something that happened decades ago when the economy in the world was completely different. It's happening right now, and I think maybe being under the age of 40, I can speak for a generation that for a lot of times has just felt not listened to. Millennials feel like we're being ignored by our Congress, who's getting older and older and older. And then we have Gen Z right behind us, who's going to be the largest voting bloc soon. We need to activate those folks and let them know, they don't have to be stuck in that false binary. And so that's the mission that we're taking. And that I think there's a lot of enthusiasm around the country for finding alternatives. And I hope more and more people wake up to it. And, I'm running not just for this election. I'm running to start the movement that in 20 or 40 years is going to see the major sea change we need to have alternative parties on the ballot all across the country, challenging a two-party system and really providing that spectrum of thought, that spectrum of diversity that people need. And of course, I believe that the libertarian philosophy of limited government, individual rights, and decentralizing power away and bring it back to as local a place as possible is the best path forward. And I'd love to be an advocate for that across the country.
Absolutely. I would like to ask, because being the candidate, a third party candidate, right? It has been third party candidates often face accusations of, the spoilers or the wasted vote. How would you respond to critics who suggest your candidacy could split the vote and lead an unfavorable outcome?
Yeah. So, I ran for U.S. Senate in 2022, had those same accusations thrown at me. And I say the same thing now that I did then. You can't spoil what's already rotten. And that's the two-party system. It's rotten to the core. Look at the fact that our Congress has an under 20% approval rating, but an over 90% reelection rate. That should tell you right now that the concerns of the voters are not being met in our government, that it's not really being heard, and that there's too much entrenched power in place. And so, for me, I can't spoil something that's already broken. In fact, there are much better alternatives out there, like ranked choice voting that I mentioned earlier, proportional representation, easing ballot access requirements so more candidates can go to the ballot to provide voters their choice. These are true things that really could improve our democracy, improve our democratic process, and prevent the so-called spoiler effect. But I can't give that to you. I'm just Chase Oliver, the candidate. You know who can? The people who are in your state house right now. They can give you ranked choice voting. They could give you proportional representation or end gerrymandering, but that would require Democrats and Republicans to stop spoiling the election. They spoil every election they participate in because they know a spoiled election is one that allows them, the two-party system, to maintain power. We need to flip that script and not allow people to make us the spoilers. The truth is the people in power are the people who allow elections to be spoiled because they have plurality voting when they could have a better process. Ranked choice voting, approval voting, star voting, any alternative voting method that truly brings about consensus is better than plurality voting where people under 50% of the vote get elected. But if we had that, Democrats and Republicans would have a harder time maintaining power. And so the truth is I am not a spoiler. Green Party, they're not spoilers. The Democratic and Republican parties are spoilers because they are happy to do it because it means a spoiled election is one they can maintain power. And so that is my answer to that accusation all the time. Every accusation is a confession from the two-party system, and that is just one more.
And I take it that that solution can also help the whole question of term limits, right? Because I forget, but there was a viral video that I saw on social media just showing the average age of literally everybody in Congress, and I'll just say there was a lot more people that was pushing those 80s that I was like, whoa, I didn't realize this was. And it's like, again, for millennials or like you mentioned, Gen Z, that stuff is not relatable to the new upcoming voters. Like it's just sometimes young people prefer to see someone that is more relatable, more of their age. Like, okay, yes, I can, because they just get tired of kind of, hearing somebody that is, I don't know, maybe that was born during when it was black and white television. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just it's a turnoff for a lot of people.
Well, think about this. I have good news and bad news for you, Arrington. So the bad news, I'll go first. The bad news is to pass term limits, we would have to amend the U.S. Constitution, which requires Congress to approve of it and 3/4 of the states. And so it's going to be really hard to get that passed. But here's the good news. We can enact term limits as voters right here, right now, by refusing to vote for incumbents who have been in for too long and demanding both in our party primaries and in our general elections that we are not going to vote for entrenched power anymore, that we demand new leadership and to roll it over. And so whether it's in your party primary, if you're a Democrat or Republican, or whether it's in the general election as Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, or anybody who's independent of the two-party system, these are the ways you can actually enact term limits as voters, is by forming coalitions and saying, we're not going to have these 80 and 90-year-old people in our Congress anymore. We need people who understand what's going on in today's economy, in today's world, what the average American worker is facing today, what the average American student is going through today, what the average American family is having to go through today. We need that perspective in Washington, D.C. and in state houses across the country. And again, we won't be able to enact term limits in the Constitution for for various reasons, the difficulty there. But what we can do is be citizens who enact term limits on our politicians by voting them out of office and demanding new and better leadership. And so that's what I advocate for across the country. I want to change the Constitution and enact term limits, but absent that, let's throw the bums out. Like, that's the truth of it. We can do it ourselves if we organize together and say no more to entrenched old leadership. We need new, fresh ideas and new perspectives that actually are in line with the 21st century and not the latter half of the 20th century.
All right. All right. Well, look, Chase, I would like to talk more on your platform. As I mentioned earlier in the program, there's so much that is at stake, and key issues coming from voters when it comes to the economy, immigration, women's reproductive rights. Those are probably, I would say, the top three. Let's start as far as, let me see here. What would I like to start with? Let's talk about the economy. So what is your platform in regards to, our economic issue currently?
Well, I think it's important to address that Americans are feeling that inflation pinch. And I think that's the most important thing that the voters are feeling, is that cost of living increase. What can we do at the federal level to ease that? Address the primary driver of inflation. The number one driver of inflation is the debt and deficit, the fact that we print trillions of dollars a year out of thin air to pay for our deficits. And when we do that, we devalue the dollar that's in our pocket, whether it's for our business or our own life. That is making it harder to get to make ends meet. It's harder to end up with black ink at the end of the month, and that is providing stress to the American voter. So we need to balance our federal budget by making a lot of cuts to what we're spending, because we spend trillions of dollars a year over what we take in. And so if we're ever going to be able to cut taxes, we have to cut spending first, because if you cut taxes without cutting spending, you just create more inflation on the back end. And then the second great driver of that is, of course, the supply chain, of which there's a lot of deregulation and things we can do to actually keep goods moving more quickly. And of course, creating free market, ending protectionist barriers, so we have more goods moving in and out of the country, creating a market that allows for more prosperity. So these are the two primary drivers of my economic plan, is to cut down the amount of spending that our government does, and then also allow for better movement of goods both in and out of the border via our trade policy with other nations, trying to improve that free trade picture, as opposed to putting up tariffs and more barriers, which is what both my opponents have actually advocated for. I seem to be the only free market candidate left in this race, but I'll happily carry that mantle.
Well, now staying in the economy, when it comes to job creation and also income inequality, any things you would like to say for those two?
Yeah, two things, absolutely. So as far as job creation, we have to remember that the government doesn't create jobs. Private industry creates jobs. What the government can do is create conditions for the private industry to be able to create more jobs, and have more capital available to create more jobs. And to that end, we want to basically, and also as far as income inequality, particularly in the marketplace, we want to remove basically all of the carve-outs and deductions and subsidies that are given mostly to these large corporate interests that lobby for them. We want to remove all of that and overall flatten the tax code to run and starting a business. And this lowers the barrier to entry for new entrepreneurs to create a new business, a small business that can actually compete on a level playing field, that can hopefully see itself grow and survive and thrive. This allows for more jobs to be created organically through that entrepreneurship. And as far as income inequality, when you lower the cost overall of doing business, you're removing that barrier, you're removing that advantage that these large corporate interests have basically bought and paid for themselves. And we can clean out the tax code and simplify it and flatten it out. That will improve conditions for folks. And same with the income tax. Remove a lot of these subsidies and giveaways and just flatten the tax rate overall, so the impact that's on our wallet is less at the end of the month for those who are in the lower economic rungs. Like, I think these are things that working populations can see as a simplification, and where we don't have to have expensive tax attorneys and accountants to be able to do our taxes. We should be able to simplify the process as much as possible on our way to eliminating taxation as much as possible from the American population's pocket. This is why we want to cut government down to size. We want to limit it. And we want to bring that power, as opposed to taking money out of your wallet, going to Washington, D.C., washing that money and seeing it come back less valuable when it hits you back. My grandpa used to say, they tax you $1 and give you back a dime, right? Instead of doing that, let's just keep the wealth within our own communities so we can better take care of ourselves, provide mutual and direct aid for our neighbors, But that's a long-term story. But overall, we want to get rid of as many carve-out subsidies and deductions as possible and just straight up flatten that rate. So that way we remove that barrier to entry into the marketplace for business, but also can simplify the tax code and lower its impact on the wallet of every American.
Well said. Well said. Well, let's move on to immigration. Immigration is a big thing. So how would you handle the border crisis and ensure national security without infringing on human rights?
Well, I think we need to think about what was the last great wave of immigration that came to this country and how can we apply that and those principles to the 21st century. So in the 19th and 20th centuries, we had the Ellis Island program. 1 in 4 Americans can trace their roots back to the registry room of Ellis Island. It's how we got Irish Americans, Polish Americans, Italian Americans, insert word / Americans came through during Ellis Island. Millions and millions of people. And what we did is we vetted them through Ellis Island, gave them a health checked to make sure they were good to go, and they came into this country. We need to be doing that at every port of entry. We need to vastly streamline the immigration process with a 21st century Ellis Island. If you want to come here to work, come through a port of entry, declare who you are to quick background check and health check. If you're good to go, you should be given status to become a worker. That doesn't mean citizenship. That doesn't mean you can vote. That means you can come here to work. And also, if it's seasonal work like agricultural labor, you can come to work when you need to and go back home when the time is right. And you can take that money back home to your family. And this is a much more humane way to process immigration. It takes whole communities out of the shadow. It prevents the need to have all these cages at the borders. It keeps families together. This is a much better process to have as opposed to trying to pick and choose how many people can come in and how many times. Let the market determine that based on the labor we need. And lastly, I'll say this. Immigrants are a net positive. They provide lots of great things to this country. And we need to respect the fact that they create jobs, they create businesses, and they add to the economic pie. And so we need to facilitate everything we can to bring that labor in this country, which we desperately need, especially as our population is aging and we need replacement workers.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's something that I feel as though is never said as much as, is a net positive. Like you just mentioned, I've always kind of been on the what's the word I'm looking for? I've always kind of debated with people that were so, oh my goodness, they're doing this, they're causing so much harm to our world, they're causing so much harm to our society. Again, I'm like, okay, so I take it you think that cats and dogs, you thought that was true, huh? I'm assuming. So it's like they always forget that, okay, the jobs that you're saying they're taking, you realize that nobody has been trying to try to apply for those jobs, and it always just kind of, I don't know, it kind of irks me at some points, because again they're bashing people that are really trying to have a better living and to leave out of a rough environment. And I don't know, sometimes I like to go off the rails a little bit.
Well, across the spectrum. So across the spectrum, first, if you look at studies, it shows that immigrants, both legal and undocumented, commit less crime than the native-born American population. So if you want actually a safer neighborhood, import immigrants into your neighborhood, because they commit less crime per capita than our native-born neighbors do, just looking at the numbers, looking at the studies there. Now, beyond that, let's look at the economic prosperity it creates. 4 out of every 10 Fortune 500 companies in this nation are headed by an immigrant or a child of an immigrant, somebody who had immigrant parents who came here and provided a better life for their kids. And that produces the same amount of GDP as the nation of Japan. The nation of Japan is the 3rd highest GDP in the world. And so when you look at the contribution that immigrants and the children of immigrants have created to the American economy, it is a huge chunk of the prosperity we enjoy. And we, of course, want to see that grow into the future. And so if you just look at the statistics, even like tax revenues, in 2018, Rice University did a study in Texas, which has a huge number of undocumented immigrants, and found that immigrants actually created a tax surplus because they paid into the system without necessarily collecting all of those things through their work, through their paying property taxes, through rent or owning a home. They have contributed, was I think over $400 million in a year to the tax base of Texas, as opposed to drawing away from it. And so when you start really getting into the numbers and taking the bias away out of this and taking the fear out of this, which is what I think many critics of immigration have done, is they've tried to instill fear into people. Oh, they're going to take your jobs, they're going to harm you, they're going to steal from you, they're going to eat your cats or dogs or whatever lies they want to come up with. The truth is that immigrants actually help this country, and we need to be embracing it. And I'm somebody who's not afraid of that. Maybe it's because I live in Atlanta. I live in a diverse city. Like, I am not used, if I'm on the MARTA train, there's a good chance that 4 or 5 nations are represented on that same train car that I'm in, because we are a very diverse city, and we're powerful because of that. It's one of the great things about being from Atlanta is that we're such a diverse city. So for me, I embrace those concepts, and I hope that more and more Americans can take the emotion and the fear out of it and just really look at the logic and the fact that immigrants have always been a contributing factor to building this country, the same as any other population that's ever been here.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that, that fear thing, it's all, misinformation. I'm a huge advocate of, I'm a part of the media. I'm more of the independent media side, but there's medias that have agendas. There's just it's sad because a good friend of mine who's a very who's an icon in the media field has always said, TV, you have to realize that it brings off a headline. That one headline is not going to, it doesn't provide you the meat and potatoes. Newspapers will always provide, meat and potatoes, and some that are more accurate, some that are not so accurate. Some just want the story and all that other jazz. But as I digress from that, I would like to move on to some social issues. Chase, what's your position on key social issues? First, you have abortion rights, we have gun control, we have the LGBTQ plus rights, as well as criminal justice reform. Let's talk about gun control first, because I myself, I'm a gun owner. I know that in our world we have a lot of gun violence that occurs, especially that it's been occurring in schools, which is very sad because it's in the hands of our youth, 14, sometimes even younger. When it comes to gun control measures, do you support to reduce gun violence how do you do so while balancing the Second Amendment rights?
So I'm a big Second Amendment guy. So I actually don't find the need for gun control to be solving the issues that we have, because again, if we look at the facts and we look at exactly what's going on, we're near historic lows in crime, and that includes violent crime. You were more likely to be mugged at gunpoint in 1985 when Donald Trump was 39 than in 2024 when I'm 39. Like, that's just the fact of it. And so if we just look at where violent crime is, we're near historic lows, even though we actually have more guns per person than we did 40 years ago. And so looking at that fact, we have to say, okay, the X factor that we're looking at is mass gun violence, mass shootings, particularly at schools with young people. And we have to identify what are the X factors that have changed from the time 40 and 50 years ago when my mom was in high school and they had a rifling club when kids were bringing loaded guns to school to target shoot after school. No school shootings occurred, to now when, post Columbine and then on, like, what has really changed? There's two things. One, the rise of social media that has allowed young people, particularly lonely young people, to find communities online rooted in extremism. It also allows us to dehumanize one another, to throw ourselves behind an avatar and say things to people online that we would never say in polite company ever. Like, that just wouldn't have flown if you were saying it, and certainly not in your mother's parlor. You know what I'm saying? Like, not polite language, right? And so it allows that dehumanization. And then, secondly, is the rise of using prescription drugs to try to treat mental health outcomes. And the rise of psychotropic drugs, particularly being prescribed to young people at a much higher rate than it used to. I think we need to examine those correlating factors to the rise in mass shooting gun violence, as well as also recognize parental rights and parental responsibility. As we saw the Appalachia High School shooting in Georgia recently, the law enforcement, including the FBI, had warned these parents that this kid was subject to violent ideations, was making threats online, and yet the parents still allowed guns to be easily accessible to this young person. And then he shot a bunch of folks, including a friend of my nephew's. And so to that, I think there is a realm of parental responsibility there. Like, if you have been warned multiple times, I think there is. And I think that they've arrested the father there. Looking at the charges, I'm not sure exactly what charges are probably going to be sticking, but there's a lot of areas of neglect that and possible manslaughter charges that I think is what's coming up now. And I think that that's probably the right path when there's a parent who does not take into account when they're warned that their child might be subject to violent ideations. But ultimately, those are the factors we need to examine, is like, what's going on when that child is online and who are they being exposed to parents need to do a better job of monitoring those things. And when schools warn parents about these things, they need to take those warnings pretty seriously. And then lastly, we need to be looking at how are we treating our kids' mental health when we're taken to a doctor. Are they receiving talk therapy, or are we just relying on, even if it's for ADHD, it used to be when I was a kid, everybody just threw the kids on Ritalin as opposed to talk therapy. What are we doing now to address mental health outcomes for young people that will prevent violent ideations and suicidal ideations, which is also a huge factor in gun deaths, which is suicide. Suicide is the thing that we don't talk about enough when it comes to gun violence. And I don't think we really address that mental health side of things. So I think there are things we can do to address the mass violence in this.
Oh, yep. You're still there, Chase.
Oh, I popped back. Okay, I'm so sorry. It was.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Stop for a minute there. My internet's been a little key, but that's essentially why I support the Second Amendment, and why I think it is. It's something that we need to address again with logic and not with emotion, and recognize that gun violence is near historic lows.
Couldn't agree more on that one. Look, Chase, don't go anywhere, my friends. We're going to take a quick commercial break, just a quick breather. We'll have more with Libertarian candidate Chase Oliver, who is currently running for president of the United States. We're just talking more about his platform. We're going to impact some more, or tapping in some more key issues that will be on the ballot box. So y'all don't go anywhere. You are listening to the Arrington Gavin Show. Do not change that dial. All right, my friends, welcome back to the Arrington Gavin Show. I'm your guy, Arrington Gavin. Joining me is Mr. Chase Oliver, again, presidential candidate representing the Libertarian Party. Chase, how you doing there again? Thank you so much for staying with us.
Yeah, doing fantastic, even though Wi-Fi is being its own hindrance today.
Hey, look, trust me, I've had so many moments where it's like, really, I'm not going to call companies out, but they know who, because I've my friends, they all know who I'm talking. Cox Communications. But that is my issue right there. But no, I want to impact some more. Last we were talking about gun control. Another big thing that's on the ballot box is women's reproductive rights. And I would like to ask, what is your stance on reproductive rights and access to abortion, especially in the light of the recent state restrictions and Supreme Court ruling? So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I am pro-choice. I am somebody who believes that this is rooted in the idea of bodily autonomy, that women should have the right to choose their own healthcare choices up to the point of viability, and post-viability. In those very rare instances, a doctor can sign off on an abortion for health or the life of the mother. But recognizing that this is something that is rooted in the central idea of autonomy of one's own body, one's own privacy to make their own medical decisions free from scrutiny. And so I am somebody who supports the Roe and Casey standards. And if I were president, I would sign that to be the federal standard, that I think all people should be able to make those decisions for themselves and not have the government being involved in that very personal decision. Now, I want to say this to the pro-life community. There are a lot of things we can join up on, team up on, that can actually lead to less abortions. Things like making birth control over the counter so more people can access that contraception easily. Let's remove the red tape and regulation and excess cost to becoming an adoptive parent. So more people see the need and want to become adoptive parents, so that more people become surrogate pregnancies. Like, these are the steps we can take together, pro-life and pro-choice communities, to lower the incidence of abortion, to lower the numbers, and to actually improve public health outcomes along the way. Like, I think these are steps that can be taken, but ultimately, I do not have a uterus, and I'm not going to make the decision about abortion for those who do, because ultimately I believe that's their decision to make, because they're the ones who are undergoing the potential risks and complications that can happen from pregnancies, up into including death. And so we need to recognize that this is a major life decision that people should be able to decide for themselves, again, up to that point of viability. And so let's, I support the Roe and Casey standard, but recognize that not everybody personally might feel that way. And I think there are steps we can take to personally and across the board reduce those instances of abortion.
Absolutely. Well said. Let's talk about climate, right? We hear a lot, climate crisis, climate change. What's your plan? What is your plan, addressing the current climate crisis?
Yeah, so I think what we really need to do is look to how we can get ourselves to where we're using less carbon-based power. The largest carbon emitter in the United States is actually our Pentagon. It's our Defense Department. So first and foremost, we want to cut down on a lot of what the Pentagon's doing around the world that will lower carbon emissions immediately. But then what can we do to power our future forward without carbon being the primary energy source? Well, we can stop subsidizing it. It's the most subsidized form of energy right now. And I say remove, again, all energy subsidies, and let's have a true free market of energy. And that includes untying the hands of the nuclear power industry, which is the most overregulated energy source right now, which nuclear power burns clean, creates waste that can actually be stored and moved around, unlike carbon or other fuels, and can power so much more homes with a much smaller land footprint than, say, wind or solar. There will be places for wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric power, and others. But I think if we really want to get ourselves off of carbon-based energy and towards a clean future, we need to embrace all forms of energy, but mostly nuclear needs to have its hands untied, and we need to make it easier and less expensive to bring new plants online. As we've seen in the state of Georgia, our recent plant went way over budget, way over time, and we're suffering higher energy costs as a result. But if we had had a reduced regulatory framework and an ease of access, we could have built that plant much more quickly. And now we actually have new plants that are even much smaller and can power small homes, or I mean, not homes, but small cities for a fraction of the cost of what it would bring to take a traditional plant online. And so I think we need to move forward with that as our goal, is to create a free market of energy. And I guarantee you, I don't want to guarantee, but I'm not a betting man, but if I were, it would be that nuclear will be the primary source of energy throughout the rest of the century if we just create the conditions for that to happen.
Okay. Awesome. Well, look, let's go ahead and move on, because I have so many questions, but I know I have you for a short time. That's what happens when you're having fun. I always feel like, the conversation, I wish it can go longer. But
we'll come on and we'll just talk. We'll talk Attitude Era WWE sometime.
I was about to say it'll be nothing but wrestling. Hey, have you seen the new Mr. McMahon? Okay. I'll talk about that a little later on. But but good docuseries, by the way. Good docuseries. You should check it out on Netflix. Pretty good.
Oh yeah.
But let's talk foreign policy. So I speak with a lot of people, just in regular conversations, different groups of people will say, I feel as though our country, they tend to care about countries over, other countries rather than their own, right? A lot of the, overseas spending, so on and so on. I want to ask, how do you view America's role in the world, and how would you change its current foreign policy priorities?
Well, first, I think I understand the natural inclination. And while I do support kind of removing foreign aid, so we're not having to take care of the rest of the world, we're taking care of ourselves, it is worth reminding the American public that is a drop in the bucket compared to what our government spends in a lot of other areas. So when I say we need to cut government down to size, just cutting foreign aid out alone would not be enough to do that. You'd have to still cut a lot of other things out here at home. But I think America's role in the world is not to be some sort of militarized leader, the world's policeman, where we're kind of backing our, exporting our values with like bombs and bullets and drones. the way we have, particularly since 9/11, with this, you're either with us or the terrorist kind of mindset. I think we need to be a leader of the world in terms of free trade and direct diplomacy and negotiation, and being able to actually speak softly and carry the big stick, which is a foreign policy objective that Teddy Roosevelt had, but that particularly since World War II, we have just swung a big stick around and said, you guys better listen to us. And I think that's really created a lot of blowback in terms of over the years. It's created a lot of animosity in different areas of the world, particularly the Middle East is, I think, one area where there's been a huge animosity towards that kind of behavior of just kind of going in with the tanks and the drones and the bombs. And so I think if we really want to lead the world, we need to do so as a leader in peace, and that is rooting our philosophy in, voluntary exchange and free trade. And I think if we do that, if we change our, kind of steer our ship in that direction, we're going to have a lot better relations with most of the rest of the world. And when we cry out for peace and when we call for diplomacy and negotiation, we'll actually be leading by example and not being hypocrites. Because that's what we are too often, is we export our values with bombs and war. And then when other people do it, we cry foul. But recognizing that, we ourselves have done many of the wrongs that we cry out against around the world. So I think we need to change our objectives. And if we do that, we can be the true leader of the free world, which is the moniker we've been given and that we so often fail to reach up to.
Well said. A few more points I would like to mention with you, because I know we're coming close to almost to the end of our time. Want to talk about healthcare. So what role should the federal government play in regulating the healthcare industry? Oh, sorry, guys. I think we're having a little technical difficulties with Chase's connection. No worries. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Chase, are you there? Yeah, I think he's frozen. No worries, my friends. Look, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll have more with Chase Oliver, Libertarian nominee for President of the United. Oh, yep. We got
we go.
There we go.
I'm back. We started saying healthcare, and all of a sudden, the computer started getting sick. The computer got a virus because we started talking about healthcare. No. So what can we do to reduce healthcare costs and reduce that impact on the American public? So first thing we can do is remove the cap on health savings accounts. Right now, it's capped at $4,000 for health savings accounts. The average American spends $13,000 in healthcare each year. So let's remove that HSA limit. Let's allow us to buy health insurance across state lines to bring about more competition. Let's allow ourselves to buy prescription drugs across international boundaries to lower the cost of prescription drugs organically here at home. And let's remove things like patent evergreening that make it harder for generics to come online. Have you ever wondered why we don't have generic insulin? It's because every few years they reintroduce a patent for the delivery system that allows them to hold that patent for a little while longer. If we had generic insulin, it'd be on Mark Cuban's drug website right now. You can buy it for a fraction of the cost. And so there's a lot of things we can do to make drugs more affordable, to allow for more access to competition in healthcare, and to remove the tax impact of healthcare by removing that barrier in health savings accounts. And these all don't require the government to completely take over all of healthcare. It still allows for that market competition. And then I'm a huge advocate for direct primary care as a model, where you just basically pay a doctor's office a set rate each month to be a member of that doctor's office network, and then you pay out of pocket for things like X-rays or CAT scans or whatever at a reduced rate, and then you get a catastrophic health policy. So if you get really sick or get hit by a bus or what have you, and so if you introduce more models like that into the marketplace, it will actually organically drive insurance premiums down, because these new models can save people money. And when that happens, the insurance companies are going to go, wait, we have to reduce our costs to stay competitive. And so there's a lot of things we can do within the marketplace to lower that impact of healthcare costs in the American family. Absolutely.
Okay. I had a couple more questions, but I really want to tie into this conversation. Recently, we've seen, and we're currently seeing it happen, New York City Mayor Eric Adams under investigation right now, federal investigation. A lot of people within his inner circle resigning that from that position. And it's something that I see that is a reason why we have low voting turnout. A lot of people would say, okay, look, they're just here just to, and there's all allegations. Nothing has been, he's innocent until proven guilty. So I wouldn't, already say he's been found guilty because it is an investigation. But just even the accusations, it rubs people the wrong way. They look at it as a lot of people that run for office or that are in politics. They're there for their own personal gain. They're, unmade promises being met. And it's just a lot of corruption that occurs. How do you plan to reduce corruption and the influence of special interests in politics?
Well, I think one of the things we can do is be more transparent with this. And so by that, I mean, and this might sound a little backwards at first, but remove the limit of contributions to campaigns. Allow people to raise as much money from individuals as they want to, but have that be transparent and be reported. So that way, every month we know exactly who's contributing to what. Because right now we have a $3,300 limit. And after that, where does all the money go? It goes into shadowy groups like super PACs and other areas that you don't have to really report who's giving what. And so there's still huge amounts of money in our politics. It's just not transparent money. And so I would say alter the system to where if you want to donate to a politician, you have to donate directly to a candidate. And that candidate has to report where the money's coming from. So you know exactly who is trying to buy and trade your candidate like cattle at an auction yard. Right. That way, you know exactly who's trying, whose emblem you should be throwing on the jacket, like a NASCAR, suit, to know who's buying and paying for your congressperson or for your president. That's how you reduce that impact, because even when there's a great amount of money, if you know where it's coming from, you can refute it. Just like Thomas Massey, he's a congressman in Kentucky. He's a Republican, and he votes against all foreign aid, including foreign aid to Israel. And because of this, AIPAC, they put a ton of money in the primary against him. He was outspent 2-1, but because people knew where the money was coming from and they knew that person, they knew their congressperson, he still won his primary because, hey, the money that where it was coming from was exposed, and exactly why they were trying to fund against him was exposed. And so there's a lot of instances like that where we can be as transparent as possible and really fight back against that influence. And of course, change the way we vote. Support the Voter Bill of Rights. Even if you don't vote for me, support the Voter Bill of Rights. Let's change the way we vote and clean up this process altogether.
Well, Chase, look, my friend, I truly appreciate the conversation. Again, you taking the time out your busy schedule, because as I, emphasize on the word busy. This is not like, let me check.
4 weeks, man.
4
weeks.
4 weeks. And I've provided on the screen for those who are watching your website, votechaseoliver.com, for I'm over here saying, like, if I'm right, how can people stay in touch with you, Chase? For those who might be interested in contribute, making a contribution to your campaign, how can people stay afloat and stay in tune with you?
Yeah, you can go to votechaseoliver.com and click get involved to join our volunteer team as we do our get out the vote efforts, the phone banking, the text banking, the door knocking, the sign waving, those things. And if you're in a position to help contribute, your monetary contributions actually help those activists on the ground have the literature in their hands, make sure we are able to go full speed ahead and let as many voters know as possible. And of course, if you want to follow us on social media, it's at Chase for Liberty on all the major platforms. But yeah, if you go to votechaseoliver.com, that's a central hub of all the information about this campaign, about myself, my running mate, Mike Termott, and all the work we're doing to spread this message across the country. So get out, check it out, and make sure you get out and vote this November. No matter who you vote for, get out and vote, let your voice be heard, and never ever let it be discounted by a two-party system.
And Chase, my friend, don't go anywhere. I will want you to stay backstage just to chop it up just a few minutes with you. I know you're a busy guy, but definitely want to thank you again for coming here on the show. But don't go anywhere, my friend. I just want to chop it up with you just a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, again, Mr. Chase Oliver. For more information, please go to votechaseoliver.com if you're interested in electing him as your next president. But my friends, once again, another great conversation here on the Arrington Gavin Show. I hope you all enjoyed and was informed and learned something. Again, I'm a person, all people and everybody are welcome from all party lines. Okay, that's one thing you do not see in mainstream media. You don't see opportunities or avenues for third party candidates. I don't hear about it, right? But look, we provide that opportunity here on this program. Make sure you vote. Be sure to tune in weeknights. Look, I gotta go, my friends. Peace.